Everybody is seated, I guess? Actually, we can turn the house lights up a little bit more, since it's mostly a question and answer thing, you know? So, just a little bit. Okay. All right. So did everybody get a chance to get here? Anybody have to go through registration this morning and get here at this early hour? Does anybody not realize where they're at, being too early in the morning? There are different kinds of conventions. There's very serious conventions where, you know, there may be some drinking, but usually it's not a heavy-duty sort of party thing. And then there's the conventions where absolutely nobody is alive before 10 o'clock. I think I have a sense of what kind of convention this is, so thank you for coming this early hour. Because at some conventions, coming to a 9 o'clock panel is, you know, it's not that much of a challenge. And then other conventions, it shows, you know, incredible commitment to come to an early panel on a Saturday. So, in case you're wondering, this is the Megatokyo panel. My name is Gallagher. This is Tom Snap, who's been working with me on the Endgames novelization type stuff that we've been doing. And so, if you wandered into the wrong room, it's okay. You can wander back out. No problem. It can happen. But we were just kidding. No, it's good. It's good. You gotta give people that opportunity. This, like I said during opening ceremonies, this is, I actually live here in Michigan, so this is actually about as local, the most local convention I've been to, actually. I live about 15 minutes away, actually. So it's actually quicker for me to drive home than to wait for the elevator plan. That's, you know, there have been evenings like, the heck of it, I'll just get the car and go. So is everybody having a reasonably decent time so far? Yeah. You know, for 9:40, that's really energetic. But yeah, I know they gave us like 2 hours for this, but we're just sort of, these panels are really sort of casual affairs. Has anyone ever been to a Megatokyo panel before? Some of you have been, so. The rest of you, hopefully it's not too disappointing. But typically the way I do these is I sort of work on, you know, questions and answers, and just sort of take discussions from there. You know, give you guys a chance to participate in trying to get some answers out of me. And I'm sure that a number of years ago, after doing panels for you know, conventions for I don't know how many years, 10 years, actually more like 8 years at a time. Sarah and I sat down and compiled a list of the 10 most asked questions. And to date, without fail, even at my last convention, several of those questions were asked. They always get asked in every question, so I fully anticipate them here too. I guess if we want to get started, does anybody have any burning questions at this point? Okay. You know, walk around with the microphone and... Oh, careful. There's like a camera in the front here that everybody's got to make sure they try to kick when they go by it. Oh, no, not to kick. That's right, sorry. Okay.
I get 2? Can I just pretend it's like a lighter and just sit here and do this for a minute?
Sure, okay, go for it. You know, what you probably should do is we should probably just, you know, if you have a question, just text message me, and we can do it that way. I mean, you know, we're like children of the future here. We can do stuff like that. Of course, my phone's pretty crappy, so I don't know if I'd actually get your messages.
It'd be more effective than using the sound system.
Oh, that's the line. Oh. Hey, this works pretty good. I've been at shows where it hasn't worked.
Got it.
Okay, you ready?
So you probably get this question like all the time, but is Logo really hallucinating, and are those things really happening?
That's kind of the question, isn't it? I mean, let's face it, we all have friends who, the way they see things, you know, I mean, if you were to sort of look at it objectively, you'd be wondering what's wrong with their heads. To them, it seems to be perfectly legitimate what they're seeing. And in some ways, if you really think about what's going on with Largo and what's going on with Piro, Largo stuff actually makes more sense sometimes, doesn't it? So, which, you know, it's one thing that just is the whole concept. Well, part of what happened is when Rodney and I started working together, our views on what we were going to do or what we are doing or what we might do were so completely non-compatible that it's like, okay, I'm going to have a little scene here with some sort of cute thing in a restaurant, and then Largo's like, I want all the characters to get hit and killed by buses and then eaten by zombies. Okay, how about one of them gets hit by a bus and we make it Largo? Okay. You know, and you get these weird things going on where there are like two stories running in the same comic. But it reminded me a little bit of one time I was walking through New York City, and I'm just walking along, and I just sort of turned to my left and looked, and there's a building on fire down the street. You know, it's burning, and there's fire engines and stuff like that. And then I walk past the street, and it's like I wouldn't have even noticed if I hadn't actually looked down the street. So part of the concept is that being being somebody who doesn't pay much attention to what's going on around them, the idea that something may be going on that one person sees and the other doesn't, I don't think is all that extreme. So that sort of became the basis for a way to make what we were doing sort of work a little bit, and the idea of perception sort of became sort of the main theme. Does anybody remember there was a big fire years and years ago? Actually, it was like 1999, I think, down in Atlanta, where they had it was a cabbage plant, I think, or something. It was a big building that they had. It was actually national news where they helicopter rescued a guy off of a tower crane because the building was like burning and infernal underneath. Anyone remember that? You guys are probably all too young. That's kind of scary. Yeah. Anyway, the MARTA line, the train line, runs right by that. I mean, we're talking like right there. I was living in Atlanta at the time. I didn't notice the fire. I was that out of it that day. So, I mean, I have actual living examples of the fact that I would not notice one of the biggest fires in the country unfolding right before my eyes on a train, you know, national news type of thing, and I didn't even notice. So that, I thought, Piro not noticing some of this stuff made total sense to me. So, okay, another question. If anyone has one.
Raise your hand, we'll come to you.
Oh, you got one over here.
There we go. Be brave. Stand up.
Ah. Oh, Death is asking a question. Awesome.
You're not that old.
No, not yet. Go ahead.
What number?
Only at my panel would Death not have a voice. Try that.
I was wondering about your opinion for Megatokyo anime.
A Megatokyo what?
Anime.
A Megatokyo anime. Oh, that is one of the questions people ask often. Nothing to me would be more fun or more interesting than a Megatokyo animation. I mean, for instance, I sometimes jot around the idea it would be fun if I sort of handed the whole thing over to the Gainax crew and told them to have fun with it. And say, you know, just whatever you want to do, I'm cool. That would be insane. Yes. That would be insane. That would be fun. One of the things that happens with often when a media property takes over for something like this, the creator often has almost nothing to do with what they eventually do. You know, they'll have a screenwriter or they'll have other people involved to actually write it. And quite literally, when they purchase options for things like this, or it kind of makes that jump to another media, for the most part, they don't want the original creator to have anything to do with it because that can actually put roadblocks in production. So, and also, there's kind of a sort of a set way things work in Japan as far as how anime happens. You know, they'll start with these, you know, properties will sort of prove themselves through the magazines and through the books, and the popularity level will be reached, and then there'll be options to do an anime. So something like Megatokyo coming from the outside, that's a pretty long shot. And then I also would opt to say that done poorly, Megatokyo, the anime would probably be anime done here, like in the US, would be one of the absolute worst animes ever done. It has all the elements of, if not handled right, it could be terrible. So, and honestly, I've never really had any serious interest in it from anywhere, but at the same time, I don't have an agent who is pushing media rights. So, it all depends. But in all seriousness, it'd be fun. I often joke about a live action Megatokyo too. That would be. No, that's not good. That would be kind of scary. But and that one I would not want to be involved in. Okay.
Note to self,
Yeah.
live action. Okay.
You can keep those ideas. Yes. Okay. All right. Next question. Somebody else got a question here.
What's in the future for endgames?
The new future for endgames, as far as the story endgames within, actually it's pretty strongly threaded into the Megatokyo story, as you've already seen examples of, and that will continue. Actually, there's quite a bit more to the story. And some of you will find out, a good portion of it actually you're going to find out in this chapter, and sort of where it goes, including what happens sort of after Largo gets killed in Endgames. There's some more information there about what's going to happen, and some clarification. So I mean, it's pretty strong. It's a pretty serious, strong part of the story. As far as, you know, if you take, it's kind of like one of the things that Thomas and I were working on was taking Endgames as a standalone story, you know, with you know, the idea that, you know, not tying in Megatokyo itself. They're not aware that they're a game. I mean, they don't think it's the real world. And there's a very consistent story, really, about from the start, where things sort of start off, right up until where I sort of plan on leaving off Megatokyo itself. So. If you like the Endgame story, there's a lot in the works. A lot of it's development, and a lot of it is waiting for me to do comics, like the rest of you, to sort of get to those points where things can be released. But hopefully, when all's said and done, you'll have, you know, the stuff that's threaded into the Megatokyo comic itself, and then also, you know, the light novels that will sort of follow along to give you, kind of fill in the rest of the history, give you another perspective on things that happened, you know, in game, and then be able to see how they related to what happened in the comic. So that's if I can pull it off. Okay. Any other questions?
He's worried about himself pulling it off.
Where can I get a Rent-A-Zilla?
A Rent-A-Zilla. I have a Rent-A-Zilla. In fact, I was going to bring him with me, but I forgot. He's at home. My friend Ray, who's actually manning the booth right now, a couple of years ago he took a Godzilla plushie, and he used marker and some other elements, and he zombified him. He like colored in the eyes all black, and like colored painted in the mouth and all that other stuff. And he also got this white plastic chain and like wrapped it around him. And then he found all these little like keychain fobs of like little game consoles, like Famicom's and Sega Genesis and all this other stuff. And then he proceeded to cut little chomps out of them and sort of tied that to it too. So, and then he's got like Band-Aids and stuff all over him. And it's not for sale, it's mine. But you know, so I do actually have a Zombizilla, but he's a chibi Zombizilla, it's not that big. He's Zom in that one. So. And Jack was playing with him once, and Jack calls him Zom. So it's he's definitely got the cute factor now. So I just have to make sure I use a lot of Purell on Jack after he's been done playing with him. So. And yes, there will be more Zom in the comic too, or Zombie. Rent-A-Zilla, yeah, that's it. But he does show up quite a bit in the comic actually in the future. So. Any other clarifications?
There. Look, I'm right here.
Actually, it's not so much from the comic, but as fans, is there anything we can do to help you? I hear on Facebook all the time, of course, that your workload, of course, is as such. And of course, there's some of us that really wish we could do something and not sure we can, but would like to.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's, you know, without question, the past 12 months, year and a half has been probably the roughest I've gone through. It was actually just a little over a year ago that Sarah was diagnosed with cancer. And in the course of that time, she's actually in good shape now. She doesn't have any signs of cancer right now, in recovery. It's the type of thing that with her condition could come back, so we have to keep an eye on it. There are also a couple of other things that came up that I have not publicly mentioned because I just don't want to go public with them. I got like double, triple whammy this year. So in doing that, trying to maintain doing a comic plus trying to make sure, you know, managing the store and all that other stuff, plus a very active 4-year-old it's been difficult. I mean, you know, for instance, unfortunately, Sarah and Jack are not here because you know, Sarah's not doing well today this weekend, and the last couple of weeks have been kind of rough on her. So unfortunately, she wasn't able to come. So you know, it's a funny thing when, you know, from a news event perspective, you know, everybody's used to, oh, something bad happened, and then you have a reaction to it. But sometimes things like, you know, cancer or other problems that have been going, they're very long. They have a long life to them, and they can affect your, you know, what you're doing on a long-term basis, and that's, you know. And then of course, you know, you have a sort of a public life like I do, you know, and people are sort of expecting things on a regular basis, and it's like, crap, what do we do now? I've been trying to maintain some sort of kind of schedule, and I apologize for it being as slow as it has been. I think that the content has been up to snuff as far as what I want to do. It's just a question of sort of ramping up to a better schedule of things as time moves on here. So I definitely appreciate the, you know, it's a funny thing. There's so many things that you end up doing that you have to do yourself, and trying to parse things off to even friends and associates can be sometimes difficult. You know, and unfortunately, I seem to always get myself into the situation where all the stuff I have to do myself. But you know, if there are things that I can use help with, I've been trying to get myself to the point to ask. I don't know if anyone's noticed, but I'm kind of a no, I have to do everything myself type of individual.
No, I hadn't noticed that at all.
Which is good in some ways, but bad in others. So
Quality control.
Yeah, there's that. I have trouble asking anyone to do anything, and then I have trouble listening to anyone's input on anything. So,
Wait, hold on. What's this quality thing you're talking about?
yeah, exactly. You know, I'll decide when it's good, maybe. But no, I appreciate that, and you know, for those of you who've kind of stuck with you know, Megatokyo over the years, I appreciate your patience, especially in the last year here, and you know, I've said it a number of times, but you know, I'm just kind of as curious and as eager to sort of see where the story goes as everyone else. I have directions and where I think things are going, but without question, as things go, sometimes I find the characters are not going to do what I was thinking they might do, and it just didn't seem natural. So what'll happen is I'll say, my God, you know, he's actually going to he would probably do something else, and then so I let that happen, and the next thing I know, I got to rewrite what I was doing. But I've been doing that for a long time now, and that I think is part of what leads to some of the, I don't know where the story has gone. Otherwise, it would be pretty mechanical, I think. So, like for instance, in the bath scene stuff, which I know everyone was thinking I was going to avoid, and I didn't. Yeah. I really was not sure exactly what Hiro was going to say at some points in that. The one thing I wanted to avoid is I did not want it to become, well, sort of a trite anime manga trope like you would find in almost every other. I mean, you know, he's not a 17-year-old Japanese high school boy. So he's not going to react like that, even though honestly I don't think even a 17-year-old Japanese high school boy probably wouldn't react the way the skater do. So it's like, okay, so how do I make this work, and how do I show as little how do I show as little pyro flash as possible? Was kind of the problem. So, but it's been interesting. So yeah, there's a lot going on in this chapter, and hopefully I can pull it off. Because really, it's been the writing and sort of pulling things together that has delayed things. Because when your kind of mind is all over the place and with things, and then you get like 10 or 15 minutes to work, and you're sitting there working, and your son comes on, and he's like, "Daddy, can you play with me?" It's like, no, I gotta work. So just go play. And then he brings his cars, and the next thing you know, he's like driving cars under your mouse. And he's like, "Move your hand, Daddy." Okay, so now I don't have a mouse. I bring the mouse over here. And then he's like playing around, and after a while, it's just sort of like, go play somewhere else. And then after 10 minutes, he comes in, "Daddy, can you make me happy?" It's like, okay, coup de grace, I'm done. He's very good. But nothing beats though he loves to draw, and of course when I'm drawing, he's like, "I want to draw." So he'll get up. It's like, "I want to watch videos." Drawings. He'll draw, and so he loves to draw on my computer. And many of you, I don't know if many of you probably remember when this happened, but I came downstairs one day, and he's in there, and he's drawing on my screen. I'm like, uh-oh. Because he'd taken crayons on my screen before, which was not too big a deal. Yeah, they went off. Anyway, he had used mechanical pencil. And so, while the pencil lead was going, no problem, it's just pencil lead. But then it wore down to the metal nib, and it started to gouge. I'm just like, love my child, love my things, love my child, love my things, and of course then I call Wacom to find out what it's going to cost to repair my $2,000 tablet. And they're like, well, I think yours is right at the time where they switched the cover types of covers, and probably can't get a replacement for yours. I'm like, oh, that's nice. But it turns out I was actually lucky that my model was actually one of the first of the newer versions of this. So I can get a replacement cover for it. It's like $200, no big deal. Love your child, love your things. But the trouble is, it'd take like 3 weeks, of having to send it off. Of course, some people would argue, well, that fits right in with your comic schedule, Fred. You can just send it off and get it done. So I've learned to deal with. I figure that the more drawing I do, the more I'll just sort of, it's like a gravel road. After a while, it starts to get smooth. So I figure if I do enough, scribbling over it, it'll just smooth out. Okay. Any other commentary? Yes, sir.
Do you have any advice for any aspiring webcomic artists, writers?
Don't.
Could I tell you job interview stories before people learn about real advice?
Do it.
Sure, why not? No, this guy, he tells me, oh, I had a job interview, but I kind of screwed it up. I was like, well, how did you screw it up? Well, they asked me a question. They said, so what was the question?
Oh, it was for a writing job in Lansing. And I had this first interview. Thought I was doing wonderfully. And this kind little old girl, she was like, well, she was probably up to Fred's height standing. She asked me, oh, Thomas, say we were thinking about hiring you. What advice would you give us?
He responds,
Don't.
I present evidence that there are people out there worse than me. Okay?
Interestingly enough, I actually got a second interview because they found my self-depreciation charming.
Oh, okay. What is that called? Reverse psychology? I think. But anyway, actually, don't is absolutely not the advice. One of the great things about doing webcomics is that, the old way of kind of getting into comics or doing any sort of writing or producing or anything is you had to produce stuff, and because really it's just about getting it in front of people to read. In the old days, back before the internet, and I remember this time, believe it or not, I mean, it was down, you were like photocopying and stuff like that in order to get things out, and then wouldn't be too many people to see it. And then there was, you'd submit things to the big publishers or comic companies or whatever, and it would end up on what they call a slush pile. And slush piles are almost never really used. The nice thing about the internet is that you can put your stuff out there, and anybody can view it anywhere. It's like a big slush pile. The only difference is that instead of just sort of the gatekeepers that, the companies that would control whether things get printed or not, basically everybody has access to it. Which is good and bad because, well, everybody has access, so it's like, how do people find your stuff? But the one good thing about webcomics is that even if you don't think your skills are up to it, even if you don't think your story is any good or done or anything, don't delay. Don't work on it for 6 months.
Or 10 years.
Or 10 years or whatever. Start working on it, because the nature of it is, as you do more comics, as you do more material, writing, any of this stuff, you'll get more practice, and your art will improve, and you'll do better at producing the things. You'll start building a backlog of material for people to read, and over time, as people will discover or come to your site, and they may find that couple of comics and they enjoy reading it, but they've also got this backlog, and that backlog has helped get you where you're at. So it's a very good medium for that. And I think there's been a lot of people who've done really well pursuing that. So there really are no boundaries to doing it. One trick is, I remember at one convention somebody asked me, it's like, so how do you produce this comic and like play all these games and do all this fun stuff? And it's like, well, actually I don't actually play any games or do any fun stuff. It's all work and doing comics. So, everybody who you have a job or you have school or whatever you're doing, and then you've got your free time, and that free time with some of my friends, it's 100% World of Warcraft. Now, it's pretty hard to write a comic or do anything else while you're doing that. So, there are choices that sometimes you have to make. And trust me, sometimes it's a lot more fun to play World of Warcraft than sit down and try to bang out a comic when you're not inspired. But if you can do that,
Well, actually, if you've played too many of the daily quests in World of Warcraft lately, I think you'd find doing the webcomic probably more fun. So, actually, if I may.
Go ahead.
Well, from my perspective, I've found that I came and I started writing and started doing things just as the internet was coming out. And most of the stuff that I was writing was just getting caught in backlogs and all these slush piles, and I really wasn't getting anywhere with it. I really wasn't improving. I really wasn't working forward towards anything. This entire new explosion of the internet and content on the internet is really, I actually like it a lot better than the way it used to be. I don't know about you.
The only trouble is now is how do you actually put it out in some way that people actually buy it as opposed to just read it for free. Nobody's figured that out yet. But and Thomas comes from from the writing perspective. So at least with my stuff, there's artwork connected with it, But when you're just dealing with prose and writing, it's even tougher, I think, to find audiences for that. But it's still possible. So I don't know if that helps. Is that the kind of advice you're looking for?
Yeah.
Okay, good. So I think we may have discouraged.
No, not at all.
Okay, all right. Okay, anyone else got some more questions?
Can you add me as a friend in WoW?
I actually don't play World of Warcraft anymore. I stopped about 2 years ago.
This may surprise you, but I've actually never played World of Warcraft. I don't even have it. It's pretty sad. I have a copy of Neverwinter Nights that was signed by the entire cast crew who made it. Signatures all over the box. I never even loaded it, just because. Well, I'm not a big MMO player. My trouble is I start playing these types of games, and the next thing I know, I want to go off and write something or draw something. So I'm a very distractible person. So, but unfortunately, yeah, I've got some friends who are big World of Warcraft players, but. If I did play, I would gladly add something.
I got a real question too.
Sure.
Can you tell us who you're leaning toward and who Piero ends up with? He finally got a connection with Kimiko, but now all this backstory with Miho's coming in, and Yuki's still waiting in the background, just like, who are you leaning toward?
Well, I'd be happy to tell you, but the truth is I don't actually know.
He dies alone underneath the Tokyo Bridge.
Wrapped in duct tape. Yeah. There's a reason Yuki carries duct tape around. I don't know if I want to go the nice boat route though. But I could. I don't know. The characters may tell me that. Yuki could do totally psychopathic. I don't know what might happen. Just to give you an indication when I started sort of the arc with, when we started Megatokyo, there was Piro and Largo, and then it's like, hey, we need some female characters to pair him with. Come on, we gotta do that. But, it's easy to just say, okay, you got these pairings, but are they actually gonna work? When I started to sort of poke at the fringes of, Largo and Erica, my first thought was, no way in hell did that ever turn into a relationship that I could possibly see. But Largo really surprised me, as I started to poke along those lines. It's like, wow, they're both psychotic, it works. So, and I think that works a lot better that way. Because I totally gave it a chance to fall apart and not work. And I don't think anyone would have had a problem with that, because it would have been like, yeah, like you had a chance, dude. I think it just feels a lot more real. So it's like with Piro, there's a lot of things that are sort of buried in there that I think people don't see. And I've had trouble making them out. I've commented too with Kimiko. I still think Kimiko's the most messed up Tokyo. Sometimes so, but I'll have to see. It's one of those things I really don't know. I have some ideas in both directions or other directions. Piro might be into robot love. I don't know. It's very possible. But I'm not talking about paint. She's too realistic. It'd have to be something more squarish. Fetishisms are seriously sad things. Okay, but as far as that goes, yeah. Like I said, I'm not really sure where things will go because there's nothing I hate worse than Dogs Machina, which is you've got that standard route. You already know where it's going. And, it's like you're just watching it to go through the right motions. This is, in a lot of ways, it's an exploration to put them in their situations and then see, would Piro say, okay, babe, let's get going, let's take that bath. That would never happen. Nobody'd believe it, except in restricts, as humor. But
Why did you print me when you did that?
I've seen some of the things you write.
Oh, yeah.
Well, that was mean. It's also true. Yes. And also, it's funny. You might think it's kind of odd that the author doesn't supposedly know where the story is going specifically. Not that is important, mind you, but when we were going through, there were some things going on in Megatokyo, and I was watching the forums, and people were like, there's herrings, red herrings you'll throw out, and people will run with them, and you're just sort of reading stuff, and you're like, boy, they got that wrong. And then you get a couple of people like, wow, that person's really on the ball, but I'm not going to tell them. And then you sort of see some things where people will take some idea that came up outside of the comic, and the next thing you know, they've taken it and they've ridden over the hill. And they're like so far out of bounds that you don't know what the hell they're thinking. So I made the mistake of trying to correct a few things on the forum and say, actually, no, that did not happen. You guys are just assuming, and it actually happened like this. I had people arguing with me and telling me I was wrong. I mean, seriously getting upset with me that I didn't know what I was talking about. I'm like, okay. I would hope I know a little bit more about Megatokyo, what's going on with the story than you do, but okay.
I don't know, I've seen some of your fans. They probably do know more than you do.
I've also seen some of the, and then I hope this happens, but Piro does this, and then Kimiko does this, and then they go to oh God, I'm so glad I write it, not other people. You get a little bit of that sometimes, but, okay, so, next question. What do you got?
Out of curiosity, what do you do if you have a writer's block? What are some techniques you use to break through it?
Well, I have ready distractions at hand. Writer's block always happens when you actually get time to work on writing. Usually my most creative times are, I've found I've come up with some amazing ideas during when I've been changing diapers, or when getting Jack a bath, or playing soccer with Jack, or various other things. One thing, when you're trying to force something, so there's like this boundary of when you do get writer's block, you just backing away from it and giving up is not, some people say, oh, just walk away from it. Sometimes you gotta push at it, and you gotta keep pushing at it, even if you don't get anywhere. Because then you'll find that later on when you go back to it, you sort of soften it up, and it comes. And sometimes you do get that breakthrough, and you just gotta sort of work your way through it. It's often, sometimes, just sort of walking away from it for a while, coming back to it the next day, helps quite a bit. But the biggest problem where the writer's block usually comes in the scope for me is when I've had a week where I have been so distracted away from it, I have not been able to work on writing or on drawing or anything like that. And I come back to it and it's like, well, what the hell was I doing? I forgot. I lost the thread of what I was doing. That happens a lot. So a lot of times just going back and rereading my previous work sort of helps sort of get the flow of what I was doing going again. So, yeah, the writer's block is a tough thing to deal with, no question.
That's something my experience whenever I have writer's block. You just break the routine that you've been in. You just start doing something else. It doesn't even have to be related to the writing, and that's just that breaking the routine gets the ideas flowing again.
And often doing something that is completely unrelated is important. Too often I think people, they're writing comics, so they figure all their inspiration should come from comics. You should allow inspiration to come from everywhere. I think people would be surprised by some of the things that influenced and, sort of shown up in Megatokyo that most people would never even catch because they don't watch murder mysteries or something. You know what I'm saying? So.
I watch a lot of the Discovery Channel on natural disasters.
We watch a lot of forensic science shows with like murder and mayhem and things like that. I figure that's so when Sarah does want to get rid of me, she won't have any trouble. Of course, it's really sad is now I find myself making SpongeBob comparisons, which is sad. You can tell where my television viewing is sort of skewed to now that I have a 4-year-old.
I was about to say, you stopped watching it when Jack was born.
Oh.
Has Largo's cool thing just completely disappeared, or is it just that one use that...
The number one most asked question. I figured. You get the prize, dude. I should bring cookies to these things. The cool thing has not disappeared. It's kind of like, I use the term, Chekhov's sniper rifle for some things. You'll have something that happened 4, 5, 10 years ago, and all of a sudden, here it comes out of the blue. Because for some reason I remembered it and it sort of clicked in with what I was doing. It's like, wow, that's perfect. I'm glad I did that 10 years ago without knowing what I was planning to do. The cool thing is it has a very specific purpose. It's a cool thing. I mean, haven't you ever had something that you're not really sure what its purpose is, but it's just kind of cool?
Deus Ex Machina.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of things like that. Even things that are supposed to be, yes, we all know that these are supposed to be useful devices. What is it? People do dumb things with smartphones. We know that there are apps that would totally qualify as cool things, right? So, in Largo's world, there are some very specific things that it has the potential of doing, including solving all the plot holes at some point. So, the cool thing will be here, and it will probably save the story at some point in the future.
Although at this point, I'd probably say the cool thing is more like Chekhov's ICBM.
That Chekhov guy, man, he had some serious arsenal going there. So, in case, is anyone familiar with Chekhov's gun as a writing element? It refers to something that, in this play that he wrote, there was a rifle hanging on a wall early on in the play. And then later on, that actually became a story element, an important story element. So it appeared to be just decoration, but it was actually something important to the story later on. And that's what the term sort of refers to. So if you're not familiar with the writing term. Okay. Any other questions we've got here?
How would you describe Megatokyo to someone who's never read it before?
You know, it's funny you should ask that because many years ago I did an interview where somebody said, "Can you summarize Megatokyo in a couple sentences?" After about 15 minutes of humming and hawing and pondering, I couldn't do it. It's very hard to write or come up with confining words to summarize things in general about a story. It's I could sort of do rambling. I guess that's why for me it's actually a lot easier to actually just sort of tell the story than just sort of write it out. I've never been very good at writing synopsises. In a lot of ways, I mean, you can see that over time the story has changed and evolved. That the original idea, it's two guys who go to Japan and sort of get stuck, and then there are all sorts of things that happen. I mean, you can describe the fact that one of them, or maybe both of them, are batshit crazy, insane, and they see the world completely differently. It's kind of like you could describe. One way to do it would be the person that you're describing it to. You sort of, what element of it would they probably like, and sort of describe that, like the Miko stuff, or the Yuki stuff, or maybe they have a thing for girls with fairy oils or something. I don't know. So there's all sorts of stuff that you could puff into, even some of the Youmacon stuff. But it's such a catch-all for me, and my trouble is that I'm very much can't see the forest for the trees because I'm very much into planting the trees. So it's very hard for me to back away and sort of look at the overall mess that it's turned into over the years, which is probably a good thing because you plant enough trees, you do get a forest. You may not like the way it looks. Half of it may die, but at least you planted something. As opposed to, anyone, if you've ever done any urban planning, sort of, very broad overview type of things, they use such large blocks for planning. It's sort of hard to, it always is somebody else who sort of takes those little blocks and then actually does something with them. So I kind of like being in the actual production side because I like to deal with the final product. So it's hard to step away from it. Okay. So we've been waking everyone up here this morning with this, or am I lulling everyone to sleep? That's always a good question. So.
You mentioned that sometimes the story gets away from you. Were there any plot lines or characters that you wanted to go into Megatokyo that didn't quite make it in?
Oh, the story got away from me a long time ago. I've never caught it. There are always little things that you might have done or thought about doing. Like you'll have little plot ideas that if you can thread this in, if this will work in, you'll end up doing. I mean, I've had ideas that I was originally planning on doing years ago that I sort of dropped and forgot about doing, and then all of a sudden it became a viable thing to do. And then I've also had ideas that originally planned out a long time ago, and I found that over time that's just not going to happen. And I have a recent case actually where I found that what I was thinking for those two characters is actually mapping to another set of characters, which fits oddly amazingly well. So it's like you worked out something that it's just a part that you sort of discarded, and it's like, wait a minute, that would actually be a really amazing concept for these other two. So I mean, it's a little bit like a parts box in a toolbox. I'm sure there are some writers who would sort of look at that, the approach that I use to writing, and say, you're not doing a pure thing where you start with a story, you plan it out to the end, everything's all worked out, it all meshes together and intersects, and
You know what I call those people? Bad writers.
Oh, okay. Having no writing training. I went to college to learn. I studied and I became, I got an degree in architecture. I actually became a licensed architect, worked for years as an architect, which is great. But then here I am, 10, 12, 20 years later, whatever, out of college. I never took any writing. I never studied writing or English in college, and I never took any art classes in college. So what am I using on a daily basis? Writing and art, so which I have no training in. Oh, and then you can add the business side, where I'm doing, making T-shirts and running a business. I've had no business classes either, so I'm not a good candidate for learning anything in college, but I've totally squandered everything that I studied at this point.
Coming from somebody who did study literature and writing and journalism, the way he does it really is about really the best way you can do it. If you plot something out and have all the connections laid out before you actually start writing, there's just going to come a point where it doesn't nothing ever goes as planned, and that's as true in writing as it is with building a shed or designing a house. There are going to be points where you're going to have to freelance. You're going to have to say, okay, this isn't working. Let's go back to the drawing board. And so a lot of times when you go through the writing, you just get the loose framework, and even by the time you're done, it doesn't even resemble that loose framework.
Yeah, because I think what happens is it ends up feeling very mechanical. I mean, we've all seen TV shows or read manga or books or anything where the story just doesn't have any real feeling to it, right? It just feels real mechanical, just sort of, I mean, those are ones that just were not, they were really planned out, but they didn't really have any, the discovery of the story didn't come from actually letting the characters do the thing. The story came from a outline and a chart, which it's like the story designed by a committee,
I've always found that writing by templates is just a terrible idea. I don't think it really ever works, and that's why I say
haven't they come up with programs that can replace writers at this point? Or do they still write crap?
Not quite yet.
Oh, okay.
Well, granted that the programs are actually about as good as most writers are anyway. So.
There's that. Okay, other questions?
Hi, I'm going to backtrack you just a little bit.
Sure.
Can you tell me what one of the craziest things, if not the craziest thing a fan has ever suggested for direction of the comic or like a scene of the comic is?
Oh, well, the craziest direction for the comic actually came from Largo himself, Rodney, back when it was at a point we had pretty much stopped collaborating on things, and he was starting to get frustrated with being any story at all, because he wanted it to be more of a gag type comic, sort of along the lines of Penny Arcade, as opposed to something that. And the story stuff I was doing was really starting to be hard to work around. Excuse me. Jeez. Let's see. And what he wanted to do is he's kind of like, okay, can we? I want this. Let's do the zombie invasion. I want to kill off all the characters except Hero and Largo, and then we'll do this. I'm like, no. Really, you want to kill off all the characters? Yeah. Because I don't like them. Yeah, and he got really pissed off at me when I introduced Miho. Because, what are you doing? So, that's probably the craziest. As far as other suggestions, I've had plenty of Largo fans come to me and talk about, oh, and then Largo can do this, and go off in all these crazy directions. It's like, you're about 14, aren't you? Just sort of that real sort of manic sort of, yeah, you're a Largo fan, no question, types. You definitely get a lot of directions like that. And then there's all the, I guess you would call them hero fans who keep wanting to get to the kissing. I feel like that part in The Princess Bride, it's like, oh no, come on. Yeah, I mean, it's nothing really specific. I mean, I haven't had people come to me with full laid out plans for where they would think Megatokyo would go, because probably they realized it would be completely useless. Although there were some threads in the forum for a while where people were trying to guess where things would go. So they'd come up with every possible direction that it could possibly go, and then see if they got it right in the end. And they'd be huge posts, and then it'd be like they'd totally go a direction they never thought of. So it's hard to anticipate what writers are doing next, I guess.
Mostly because we don't often know what we're going to do.
Yeah, exactly. So. Okay.
I am wondering about Ping's original owner, and I know he went off to America, but I'm kind of wondering if he was ever going to come back and like what he would do, especially seeing what everything that's happened to Ping, especially with how Largo has modified her.
Well, Largo has modified her her connectivity. He hasn't actually gone in and modified her. I think Erica would string him up as entrails if he tried that. Actually, Ping would. Still. Tsubasa is very specifically, let's see, where is he now? I'm trying to think where he is. I think he's in Illinois right now, actually at this phase of the story. He's getting a good view of America. And the kind of what you're asking about actually does come full circle at a point. These are things that they're just sort of, they go up into sort of a pattern where they wait for certain things to happen, and then they come descending in at the right moment and destroy the rest of the story as it's been told so far. But he has not disappeared, and nor has his contribution to the story at this point. So, and I can't really give more information than that without giving some things away, because there are a lot of things that have solidified at this point that I know are going to happen. Sadly, but we'll see when that happens.
Way back when you started Megatokyo, I'm just kind of curious, how did the idea that come up to make your wife Piero's conscience?
I think it was actually Sarah's idea, oddly enough. It was sort of like I had, at that point, most of the people and friends and whatnot were in the comic in one way, form or another, Dom and Ed and Tsubasa and various people. And Sarah's like, well, where am I? And I was like, don't know. Yeah, you're right. I did sort of set up a relationship pattern. Well, okay, that's not going to work, is it? But when in talking about it, her idea, she's like, well, why don't you put me in as your conscience? And I'm like, wow, that is a fantastic idea. Because nothing would make more sense than a insertion of this character's, significant other as a conscience. So that was actually Sarah's idea to do that, and it actually worked amazingly well. Why my other friend Ken ended up being Asmodeus? Well, he was one of the most evil crack dealers I know when it comes to anime and manga. So he was a fitting person for that role. So, and then also, what was it? Rodney was like, who's Largo's conscience going to be? He's like, I know, Boo, from Bowser's Gate. And I'm like, okay, sure. we can make him a temp conscience. He's like, yeah. And Sarah's like, well, hey, how about having some strap-on wings? That'd work. Yeah, okay, that's done. So we'll just run with that. Development was one of those things that just sort of happened on the fly with Megatokyo. It wasn't really very well planned out from the beginning, nor does it continue to be well planned out. So it's pretty fitting in that respect. But that's sort of where that all comes from. And oddly enough, some of the things that have happened to Sarah over the years, like when she was wearing the knee brace, that was something that was actually happening with Sarah at the time. And it's just kind of odd how you see bits of your own life, how they sort of been reflected in things that have happened in the comic, and how those things turned into, her first significant health issue that came up pretty soon after that, was reflected in that, and also with Miho collapsing in the bathroom, various other things. It's just funny the things that you will put into what you do that relate to things that are going on in your life. I'm going to probably look back at what I've been doing recently, and I was like, how does this bath scene relate to this, what's going on right now? Giving Jack baths. Okay, that's probably it, I don't really know. Not everything, but there are things that do show up.
If you could pick like any superhero or supervillain or anime character to insert into the comic just to make Largo's life more fun, who would you pick?
Well, some of the folks at DC had actually asked me, it's like, hey, would you be interested in doing some sort of DC Universe character thing? And being almost completely unfamiliar with all of them except Batman, which is sad, I think. But you know, I actually poked around. I was like, what would be fun to do? And I'm like, I know, I would totally be fun to have Largo go up against Wonder Woman. I don't know why that would be so amusing, but other than that, yeah, that's. And then I started to think about, it's like, could I do that? I don't think I could write that without like completely alienating me. Finally, it's kind of a little bit like, you know, if I did any of these my way, I'd probably like piss off your fan bases. Of course, maybe they were using that as a, it's like maybe we can sort of experiment and see about pissing off the fan base before we actually went ahead and did that. So, but I don't know how that all worked out anyway. So, but yeah, Wonder Woman would be a good choice, and I know that other people probably have other choices, but I'm not as familiar with the universe as some.
Trust me, you could not destroy the DC universe more than DC already has.
Oh, okay. Maybe they were doing this for me. Give me a chance to do something. So. All right.
At several points in the comic, Piero has described some of like Largo's shenanigans from before they came to Japan.
Mm-hmm.
The Mounties incident, and like chasing one of their neighbors down the street with a homemade rocket launcher.
Pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, those all happened in real life, I'm told.
Some of it did, actually. Including the Mountie thing, almost.
Ha!
We live close to Canada, remember, here.
What I would like to know is if there have been any, like, if there were any, like, actual zombie invasions or Godzilla kind of things going on in the Megatokyo version of America, or if that's localized to Japan.
Oh, there's a huge zombie invasion going on right here, right now. In the Megatokyo world.
I resemble that.
That's okay. I wasn't looking at you when I said that. I was kind of looking out the door back there a little bit.
I'm glad you said it so I didn't have to.
But yeah, it's not something unique to Japan. I think that there are, with the mechanics of the Megatokyo universe, there are centers for where things work. Like there are centers where you have someplace like the TPCD and other things that there's just more concentration of things, which happens mostly in cities, except for the small town in Iowa that isn't oddly the center of things in the Midwest. They couldn't really find a city that it worked in, so they just picked a small town in Iowa. And Tsubasa will be going through that town soon. But yeah, it's sort of a worldwide thing. It's not limited to just Tokyo. Just with the media-centric nature of Tokyo, with the gaming and all that other stuff, it's much more accessible, I guess, to outsiders coming in and crash landing in Tokyo and not having anything else to do. So that's.
Note to self: Mega Detroit. Oh wait, they already did that in RoboCop. Right.
Yeah. Largo brings Erica home to meet Mom. Oh God. Well, think of the poor saps who are Largo and Piero's friends, who are sort of taking care of their crap for them while they're gone, because they're there. So, yeah, there's a rough structure for what's going on back home.
There's a reason why Piero and Largo have no hurry to get back to the United States.
We're not going home. We can't go home anymore. Okay. What do we got? A little bit.
Not that I want it to end, but if Megatokyo ends in the future, do you have any other ideas for projects that you would work on, and would you do another comic?
Oh, absolutely. In fact, I've already started working on a number of different comics and other different ideas that, they're not the same as Megatokyo, obviously. We go in different directions or do different things. And those are the types of things where getting them to germinate and seeing whether they have legs or not is kind of a challenge. Not to mention that, the way that I'm sort of seeing things ending up in Megatokyo itself, I can almost see there being spin-offs, for crying out loud, with what sort of things we're going. that I can have a lot of fun with. But yeah, I mean, as long as I can, somehow manage to keep doing comics and do them in certain ways, hopefully I can branch out a little bit, because really this is my freshman work. I mean, I haven't done any other comics, so it'd be kind of nice to actually do something from Go and sort of see where that falls, without having to send people back to chapter 0, which is really depressing. It's like, I know my artwork isn't that great, but man, it's a little better than it was back then, that's for sure. So it'd be nice to do something a little more cohesive too, because Megatokyo is very much a jumbled bag.
You say the same thing when you send people to chapters 1 through 10, though.
Yeah, I mean. Then somebody buys book 6, and it's like, I've never read it before. It's like, oh, you're buying book 6. So okay, sure, why not? It makes as much sense as the rest of it. So, but yeah, I do have plans and ideas, and Megatokyo is still pretty interesting to me because it has a tendency to change and morph over time. But I definitely have a lot of ideas with other types of things I'd like to do as well. So. Okay. Well, maybe we'll take a couple more questions here. I'm sure you guys are ready to get going here.
What's going on with Largo's class?
Actually, you'll be visiting his class here fairly soon. So you'll be finding out about that. It should be interesting. Especially given the technology of teleteaching and the ability to teach classes remotely. Because he's still up in the Sendai area right now. Although, actually, that's right, I worked something out. I don't know, it's one of those things, but the class happens. I'm just not sure exactly. It's like, how much disaster does it turn into or not? I haven't decided yet. But his students love his class now, except for Junko, but actually she loves it too. She's not willing to admit it.
She doesn't like to admit she likes anything, though.
No, absolutely. So, all right. So last question, last couple of questions here. Make sure we take care of everybody. Good.
1, 2, 3.
Okay.
Would Largo be able to see Wonder Woman's invisible jet?
Ooh.
With his cool thing, yes. He held it up like this. And he'd be able to see it. And then he'd ask her if he could fly it. And she'd say sure, and she'd strap him to the outside of it and say, okay, let's go for a ride. And he'd love it. Of course, I'd strip all his clothes off and went flying probably, but okay.
No, he would have done that before he actually got strapped to the jet.
On an invisible jet, that'd be pretty disturbing. Okay, let's go. This is why I don't really want to do anything like that, okay? Where bad ideas come from. As I've often described the process of writing anything. So, okay, and another question.
Okay, what is the most embarrassing thing Largo has ever done to Piero?
Actually, I don't think we're allowed to say that in public.
The most embarrassing thing Largo has done to Piero, or done with Piero witnessing it, or done with Piero hearing about it, because all three of those could be bad. Yeah, in comment, there's no question that Largo just trying to describe this problem to Piero is probably one of the more. Oh shit! I can't. What? No. Okay. How do I give him advice? No, I don't give him advice on this. Type of problem. That's probably the worst in comic, and I'm sure there's been. Largo had a thing for leaf blowers, and that's one of those jokes. It's like, let's just leave it right there, and we won't take it any further. So, when you take Largo's sort of, is he innocent or is he not innocent? Innocent by reason of insanity, but sort of knows where he's going. You can take those things, and Largo and Piero being probably a little more easily embarrassed. Yeah, it's a wonder they're still friends. So, yeah, we won't go into the leaf blower thing, but I'd probably say it probably involved the leaf blower thing and fire.
Well, that was a given with Largo.
But there's electricity involved too. So you're talking gas, fire, electricity, and a leaf blower. Okay, next question.
So, is this working?
No, not
Yes.
at all.
I hope this isn't too bizarrely tangential, but Harvey Suzuki, I remember you saying something about it that was kind of vague, like that you liked it, but you don't talk about it because you liked it for a different reason than everybody else.
What was it? I'm sorry, which?
Haruhi.
Oh, Haruhi? Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
You know,
as far as
it has some similarities to Megatokyo, I think, and kind of, playing around with a lot of anime things and stuff like that.
Yeah, well,
so
not that I can be opinionated about anime and manga titles that I like or dislike or how I feel about how they've gone. But Haruhi, any Haruhi fans in here? Woo! Okay. All right. I love the show and absolutely despise it at the same time. Mainly for the reason that I feel like, my feelings is that the character Haruhi herself, what I was seeing coming from her, was not dealt with by the writers. They went off in other directions that I felt was really unfair to her and how she felt about a lot of things. Which is a really bizarre way of looking at it, maybe, but I was kind of pissed off at one point that I felt like they were trying too hard to just get to fan servicey crap, which I thought was really sort of degrading to her over time, as opposed to sort of following where I thought that she herself would have wanted to go. So, I mean, that's pretty much, I think, what you're describing, which is maybe probably a little high-handed in my opinion, to approach things that way. But, you'd see little, you ever seen, like you're watching anime and you just get some sort of little feeling about something, and you kind of wish it would go one way, and then the story goes off in some totally different direction, and you get disappointed. Does that ever happen with anything you've ever watched? Yeah. I mean, it's the same kind of thing. Not that that's ever happened in any other anime that I've become disgusted with because it didn't go the direction I wanted it to go.
Angel Beats.
Yeah, so let's not talk about Angel Beats. There are no heroes, okay? Angel Beats was written by Maeda Jun, who was one of my heroes up until I watched Angel Beats, which is not true. He's still a hero, but don't get me started on that. You guys know darn well what will happen. But yeah, and it's funny. So in some ways, as a writer and somebody who does this stuff, I'm also a very difficult fan of things to deal with. So I can understand where a lot of people are coming from on a lot of things, and I think that helps. So I can understand why people get irritated about one thing or another. And I have a tendency to write things and go in directions where it looks like I'm going with a particular trope, and it's like, oh God, Fred's not going to do that. I'm going to stop reading now. It's like, will you let me finish? That's the trouble with playing with those, those themes or those tropes about how things might work. People immediately assume, oh, this is going to go that direction, and that pisses me off. Like, no, let me finish. So challenging them is a lot of fun, but it's also dangerous. So, okay. Was that the last question, or do we have one more?
Last one.
Oh, from Death. I love it. This is appropriate. Yes, sir.
Well, considering the phrase that you just used, have you ever been to TV Tropes?
Have I ever been to
TV Tropes, the website?
TV Tropes? Yes, but I try to avoid it as much as possible. At this point, TV Tropes, linking it on the forums or in the IRC channel is a bannable offense.
The last time he went there, he got lost for 3 weeks.
You never ban Yama for that. Remind me to do that when we get back.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, so did I take care of everybody's questions at this point? Everybody awake? Ready to actually enjoy the actual show here? Yeah. So, okay. Well, thank you very much for coming. Appreciate your time. All right, and I'm going to be down at my table in the dealer room if you want to look for me there. We have a lot of Sarasat PDR hats with us, and I think I have a signing thing this afternoon. I don't know what time it is, but okay. But
I was going to say, I thought it was next.
Now it's at noon. They moved it. Oh, they did?
Noon at 42 North? Okay. All right, so there's a signing session there, or you can find me at the booth. And I have a webcomic panel tomorrow at 3, with Mookie, and I don't know who else is going to be there, but that's tomorrow. And the rest of the time, you can just find me at the booth, so feel free to stop by. So thank you very much.
Bloody.